I'm here to talk about an ethical dilemma that recently occurred within my agency. I am interning at an acute care facility in which individuals reside 3 to 6 months at a time. The individuals have either or substance abuse problems, mental health problems, and often they are co occurring. And within the agency, the individuals have treatment plans. And the treatment plans not only deal with mental illness and substance abuse, but also with either enhancing or teaching independent living skills that will allow the individual to transition into the community and be able to self sustain. My ethical dilemma will be evaluated using the ethics model of decision making, in which I will examine relevant personal, um, societal, agency, client, and professional values. I will think about the NASW code of ethics that apply, as well as providing possible outcomes of different decisions that can be made. Identify who's going to benefit and who will be harmed by the decision making process, and the consultation between the supervisor and colleagues, which were the treatment team staff. In this particular situation, the staff was discussing the progress of consumers, and the individual's name came up on the list. And the concern with him is that he is ready to transition out by all intents and purposes, with the exception of being financially ready. So, as part of his treatment plan, he was to learn how to budget and be able to pay for an apartment when he transitions out, not only for short term but long term, and be able to sustain financially to meet his own basic needs. So the agency discussed the fact that he doesn't have enough money in his bank account to transition out should an apartment become available. He does have another check coming in around the first of the month, and if he were not to use any money he has currently in his account and were not to touch the money that or spend the money that will be coming on the first, he would have enough money for the apartment that he anticipates transitioning into. The consumer is ready to move out. He is aware that he needs to be able to be financially stable. However, he has the belief that he'll be able to get a loan and not have to save money for the apartment. The concern comes in is that he does not have a job. He doesn't have any credit, so the availability of a loan is drastically reduced. To make that a sole factor is concerning, and which raised the question of whether or not the agency should request payee-ship. So payee-ship means that the individual would no longer have control of his finances. The agency will become responsible for making those decisions and not the individual. So when I'm looking at this ethical dilemma, we're looking at 1.01 from the NASW Code of Ethics, which is commitment to clients. So the social worker has the commitment, and the agency has the commitment to the client to keep their best interests in mind. However, if he is not able to save money or rationally decide to do so, then he may become a legal obligation for the agency to take that control from him. If that happens, then 1.02 becomes a concern, as that is self-determination. If the agency requests payee-ship, then the individual no longer has the right to self-determination, and it can cause possible additional outcomes that are negative for the person. In terms of loss of self-determination, they no longer have to have informed consent. So if it is legally determined that the individual cannot make sound mental decisions in terms of finances, then they would not have to have his consent in order to take that from him, if the legal system allows that. 1.14, that's where clients may lack decision-making capacity. So if it is legally determined that he's not making sound choices financially, then what would be next was just making sure that the rights and interests of the consumer are fully considered before payee-ship is granted. And from a professional standpoint, 4.02 would be discrimination, making sure there's no mental discrimination and that it is true in fact that the individual lacks the capacity to make that decision for his finances. And 4.04, making sure there's no dishonest fraud or deceptions in terms of how much mental capacity he has versus where he is able to make decisions for his future. And then for society perspective, 6.01, social welfare values are making sure social justice is taking place. So we want to make sure that the individual won't become an intentional burden on society due to the fact he cannot maintain his own finances. And then 6.04, social and political action. Again, just making sure that if the individual transitions out, that he is not going to become a burden on society and that the policies that are currently in place are representative. So when we're looking at payee-ship, there are options. If the individual just begins making the right choices for his future or sound financial choices for his future, then the agency will not need to request payee-ship. In that instance, the individual would be able to sustain himself foreseeably long term. If he does not, then the agency would consider requesting payee-ship, in which the individual will no longer have the right to make his own decisions. The psychological problems from that would be that the individual could possibly become more dependent on the system. He may have lower self-esteem, lower self-worth. It may cause conflict between the agency and the individual. It may also cause problems between the individual and his family, as he's no longer able to provide them with money. In this situation, the agency would need to take extreme care in making sure that they're not using their ability to manage his funds in a non-productive way. They would not be able to coerce the individual into certain behaviors based on the fact they have money, and they wouldn't victimize the individual either. The sole purpose would be to ensure that the individual has the necessary finances to live independently. So when we're looking at society believes that when you're an adult, you should be making your own decisions and you should be held liable. In this individual's case, he does have a traumatic brain injury, and it is likely that his decision-making capacity is diminished to the point that he can't understand the long-term implications of not saving or relying upon a loan that may not come through. So is the incapacitation, or is there incapacitation? That would be the first point of reference. And if there is incapacitation, is it actually hindering his ability to make these decisions? The agency has reviewed his case and have decided that the individual would need in the next month to make a sound would need to save enough money in order to afford the apartment to transition out. So if he doesn't save money, then the agency feels it is their responsibility to request payee-ship in order to begin saving his money for him. As of now, they can't have him pay in advance for the apartment, so his money is available to him 24/7. And he is going out within the community on passes, so he's spending his money every time he goes out, and what money he has left will be needed in addition to his next paycheck. So the agency decided to wait to the next paycheck to see if he can continue, or if he can save what money he has now and add it to what money he has coming in to be able to pay for his apartment. If he cannot, the agency has decided that they will request payee-ship in order to ensure he has the necessary funds. So while it benefits the member on one hand, it also harms the member on the other, in the fact that payee-ship means loss of autonomy and loss and infringement on civil liberties.